Okay.
Sorry, Jean.
Frank, I don't know if you can see, you can't see anyone yet, but Nan Stolzenberg is our consultant, and she'll be speaking a lot tonight. I don't think Tim is on yet. Val, do you have anything from the planning committee to report?
Yes, I could say that they're finishing up the solar battery aspect of the solar siting requirement, and in the end, it's a fairly major aspect because it's a totally different aspect than other than land coverage and things like that. The solar batteries have to do with you know, it's essentially the cutoff point is something the size of a tractor trailer. So it's virtually like putting a building on the site. As a matter of fact, 600 kilowatt hours is the cutoff line for the batteries, and those 600 kilowatt hour batteries would power a factory, which means that essentially that something like a medium factory or a farm certainly would not have to apply for any kind of review for something like that. That anything larger than that, though, would, and of course, it raises a whole series of other kind of issues. It's one of those tricky situations where I think the planning board, the people who are still working on it, you know, everybody is doing, Will and Bill are doing a fantastic job of navigating the incredible sort of constant shifting targets because solar collectors are changing in terms of their accuracy, their feasibility, and in terms of what battery systems are being used, even, you know, going from highly toxic and flammable ones to certain ones that might be perhaps much less so. So they, it seems as though their meeting is Thursday night, and they will be discussing a final version, I think, or working toward the final version of the battery siting, solar battery siting law, which would be added to the solar siting law.
Wow, interesting. Thank you. Okay, Nan and Rick came last Tuesday and took a drive through the town of Caroline. Nan, do you want to give us some of your observations from that?
Sure. So we spent about, I don't know, 4 or so hours driving up and down and around and back, and followed the route in all of the points that you asked us to take a look at. I think we hit most of them, including 3 or 4 seasonal roads that we weren't sure about, but we went on anyway, and they were wonderful. And loved it, and loved going through the forest there. So anyway, it was really great. I think we learned a lot. Our impressions were first that the town was, because I grew up in central New York. I grew up in Auburn, so it's not like I'm not familiar with central New York, but it was more rugged than I anticipated. You know, it wasn't just hilly, but it was, you know, there were a lot of really steep slopes and a lot more, it reminded me more of the Catskills than of central New York. So that was actually surprising to Rick and I. I mean, we had both looked at the slope map and could see clearly that there were a lot of slopes. When you drive it, it's a different impression than seeing it on a map. So, you know, we went and we looked at all of the hamlets and understand why in your comprehensive plan you kind of say, well, there's only like 3 major hamlets, even though there's other hamlets. You know, and with the land use kind of eye at looking things, each of your hamlets really has a different character. They're all quite different. Some of them are, you know, have some characteristics of like the typical hamlet of, you know, buildings closer to the road and more dense and smaller lots. So, you know, the hamlets really stuck out, and some, you know, some are clearly more developed than others. We had lunch at the Brooktondale Cafe, Brooktondale Market. Yeah. So that, unfortunately, it was raining at that point, so we had to sit in the car because they weren't open inside for eating, but that was good. Um, the We were struck by, kind of outside of the hamlets, more of a uniform kind of residential growth pattern, that maybe a little more than we expected. That there were, there was a lot of just kind of spread out low density residential development that's kind of spread out across the town. We also, noted that there's a lot of farm fields in the valley areas, but not a lot of crop work. It looked like it was mostly hay. So I have a lot of questions about the type of agriculture that is taking place. We didn't actually see a lot of farms themselves. There was a couple horse farms that we saw, a couple beef farms, but a lot of land that looked like it paved. And we weren't sure whether those were kind of Caroline farms or they were out of the area farms that were renting the land. So we had some questions. Not that that is neither here nor there. We just were, interested in where, who owns the land and who's farming the land, and whether they may be out of town farmers that are either own or renting the land. So there's a lot of hay fields that, and there were more fields that were in the early stages of, looked like they hadn't been mowed for a couple of years. So, it looked like maybe some of the agriculture was transitioning out. So we're just a little curious to learn a little bit more about the agricultural activities that are going on in town. The other thing that was interesting was from our first meeting with you, and you all talked about more development on Route 79, and in that your task force was very concerned about franchise businesses. And I guess we were expecting to look, when we got into town, we were kind of expecting Route 79 to be more developed than we thought it was. And that was just, there's some storage, like self-storage facilities that look like that have come in.
Mhm.
But we were kind of in places like Caroline. You see Dollar Generals, you see the convenience store kind of things. I think you had one gas station kind of convenience store. So we didn't, we just thought maybe that there was, I guess I'll turn that around, is that 79 appeared to be less commercially developed than I had thought based on our first meeting together. That's not to say that you're not concerned about it or that we don't have to think about it. It's just that I was thinking in my head it was more of a strip kind of development that you see in many rural communities. So that was
just a note. I think that observation deserves a comment. That I think that's part of what conversations related to the comprehensive plan have touched on, is that Caroline residents don't want a strip of development like you were expecting to see.
Right.
So that's an important piece, I think, of the culture in the community that this town of residents is trying to keep.
Mm-hmm. Totally, I get that, and and on several occasions, I think a lot of times we go into communities, and it's unfortunate, but I use the saying, some communities the horse is long out of the barn from a land use perspective, and it's hard to undo things once the strip kind of development has happened. And so you're totally right. I think you have an opportunity to recognize that you still have opportunities to prevent that kind of anywhere USA from developing in town. So I'm just looking at some of my notes. you know, you've got some terrific ridge lines and scenic views. I mean, all over the place are, you know, just wonderful vistas. And, you know, I could really see, and we wanted to look at the land use patterns and see who owns what kind of parcels, whether they're big parcels, small parcels, but in some of the ridge lines are in the state forest, but, you know, a few misplaced developments on a ridge line really changes those kind of scenic views. So the ridge lines and the scenic views were certainly, you know, you can't drive through town without knowing that that's a significant part of your rural character. We were very surprised. We were highly anticipating because you had mentioned the Smurf Village. You used the word Smurf Village. And so we were like, you know, what is the Smurf Village? And we were like, oh, well, it certainly can't be like, you know, the mushroom kind of roof houses that you see in the cartoon. And when we got there, we were like, whoa, this is really interesting. So that development was really interesting. And
it is, isn't it? Yeah.
It's very interesting. And we went right online and, you know, started reading about it. And, you know, so I'm interested in hearing how you all feel about that kind of development, whether you like it, don't like it, want to prevent others like that, or you're good with it. So that was actually, Rick and I had never seen anything like that before. That was a really unique. Yeah, that was really unique. I mean, in the sense of it, the design, in the sense of how it was, you know, certainly the colors and the collection, you know, the cluster of tiny houses. And yeah, it was very, very interesting. So I'd be, you know, as we go through, certainly want to hear your impressions about that kind of development. And I assume that
yeah, we'll talk about that. That's great.
Yeah. So, but that was like really, we drove around there multiple times trying to get a feel for it. And, you know, at first we weren't sure whether they were owned units or rental units. So, you know, we went right on to read about it. And they have another one that same owner, now I'm trying to remember where it was that I read, they have another one that they're building like that.
They have one on Seneca Lake that is that's short-term rentals, and they're more for visitors rather than rentals like this. And I think from what I have seen of the cottages, they're all furnished and they're all quite fancy.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Well, we were really very interested. The other observation we had, like in front of the Brooktondale Market and at the Boyceville Cottages, there were bus
shelters.
Yeah. And I thought that was great, you know, because you know, that the fact that there's buses that come out to at least those locations, we might have missed some others, but that was really interesting. We were glad to see that.
Yeah, there's a bus shelter also at the town hall.
Okay,
and
we missed that one.
On 79, and I don't think there's another one in the town that I can recollect.
Okay.
Okay.
You know, we did see a couple, I don't know if I would call them billboards per se, but there were a couple off-premise signs.
Yep.
You know,
there are billboards.
That's a zoning issue. We did drive through the mine, not the gravel mine, I guess it is a gravel mine.
Yes.
And, you know, that was a lot more extensive than we anticipated. That's a land use issue. You know, you're going to have to decide whether that is something in and of itself. You know, those things aren't mined forever. So that's an area that we will need to pay attention to and figure out what you want to do with. We wondered, there were a couple cell towers that we found. I think at least one of them was on maybe up in the state forest at the top, although we weren't real sure where the boundary went. So cell towers and how you regulate, or if you regulate cell towers, is another land use issue that you may want to address.
Okay.
And you know, we went up Buffalo Road, and you know, we did see, you know, a couple places that have some junk and some debris along the side of the road, and you know, that's not unusual in rural upstate New York. You see things like that a lot. So that may be something, or it may not be something. You know, some communities want to address that, and some just say that's, you know, that's just the way it is. So, but we, you know, we like the multifamily housing right behind Town Hall. That was really good to see, because a lot
Excuse
of,
me, but
yes.
when you went up that, did you make it to the McCormick Center?
Yes, we did. Shocked. You know, we had seen that on the map. We knew that, you know, we kind of knew what it was. But when we got there, and like, there was like, you know, the barbed wire fence and with the razor wire on top, we were kind of like, wow, how did that get to be there? I'd love to know the history of how that got to be in that location like that. So that was another surprisingly big feature that we didn't think it was going to be that big and that intense.
Yeah.
So yes, we did get
It
to
is.
see
It was. I don't know. I really don't know the history, but it was originally built for youth offenders who were considered extremely violent. They had committed very violent crimes. And I think I'm not sure if it's still a youth facility, but it's still considered for pretty violent
It sure looked like
felons.
that it was.
Yeah. And it's a large amount of employment in the area as well.
Well, we noticed the cars that were parked there. That was like, wow, this is a big facility. And there were a lot of employee cars there. In fact, we were sitting in the parking lot looking at it, and someone came out of one of the buildings and started taking pictures of us because we were staring at them. So looked like they were very sensitive about someone staring at them.
It may also
Don't
be
do
worth
that.
that it was one of the places that when the ambulance service was working, we had quite a few calls up there on a regular basis.
Oh,
Yeah, Nan,
didn't know that.
Yes.
just that was just a youth camp to start out with, because I remember when I was in Boy Scouts, we used to go up there and play ball against the inmates, which were young kid juveniles. And for your information, there's no cell tower on state land here. It's all on private land.
It is, okay.
And also, I believe you can look up, supposedly there's a long-range plan for that gravel pit. In the end, it's supposed to turn into a lake and some housing. So I'm not sure where you'd find that, but that's supposedly.
Yeah, well, that would have a DEC mining permit, and they have to have a reclamation plan filed with DEC. So we can easily get that reclamation plan from their permit it's probably on DEC's website, but we can certainly get that.
Okay.
I have a question. Further out from Slaterville Springs towards the county line, was there a gravel pit there? There's some on if you're heading out of town on the right-hand side, right after Slaterville, there's some thing that makes me think of gravel.
That's Kim Wetzel's pit.
Yeah.
And is it a gravel pit? I don't know what it is.
He's a septic and an excavation business, and
Ah,
I believe he does have, I'm not sure what he does, but it is his pit.
okay.
I
just didn't know what it
I think
was.
he stores gravel there for septic.
Oh, he stores gravel there. Okay.
So.
Anything
So,
else,
yeah,
Nan?
just to finish up that, I think it gave us a really good feeling for the landscape and the development pattern. You know, clearly you have the home businesses that are scattered throughout town. There's, you know, auto repair kind of garage businesses and other kinds of things. We didn't see, I think we saw one bed and breakfast, but there might be others that we just missed. We
Yeah,
didn't
there
have
are.
big signs. Yeah. So, you know, clearly home-based businesses are important to the town. You know, there, other than the hamlets, there didn't seem to be, you know, so you kind of have like the hamlets, the valley areas, and then the steep slope forested areas. So there didn't seem, from a residential development point of view, a lot of, you know, like one area of, I guess the area of in the northeast corner north of 79 seemed to have a little more development than other areas that seem to have more newer homes and maybe, you know, more of them. But so I think it will greatly inform us to offer, you know, tools and recommendations for you to think about and chew on. And, you know, we'll explore it. I think it was a great activity, so that as we go along, Rick and I will have a much more thorough understanding of the landscape and what's going on, so we can understand where you want to go with this. So it was, you know, we were really glad to have done it.
Good. Does anyone have any comments or want to answer any things that Nan brought up?
Sorry, everybody. I was having trouble getting on tonight, and so I was supposed to make a report. But one of the things that I would have said, and probably Val said this, is that I believe that the planning committee is going to be taking on our telecommunications plan
Oh,
like soon. And this has been an aim of the town since we had to build the last cell tower, which was industry based and promoted, and got located on a piece of land after the company went up and down Boltwood Road trying to find somebody who would take it. So we are going to be working on a town-wide telecommunications plan
okay.
Great.
soon.
Thank you.
Yeah, and you know, yeah,
go
go
ahead.
ahead.
No, go ahead, Nan.
No, I was just going to say, and then some communities wrap those individual laws up into one, you know, one unified piece. So, you know, ultimately you may decide that a cell tower or telecommunications section in the zoning is appropriate. You may decide ultimately that the solar law that you just passed or you're going to pass, sometimes those are standalone laws, and sometimes they're wrapped up all kind of like a one-stop shop kind of thing. So we'll have to decide. This is more of a housing kind of thing, of whether it's more convenient to have them together or not. So we'll have to talk about those as we go along.
Gene, may I, I'm not on the committee, but you asked for comments, may I make one?
You may.
Nan, regarding agriculture, I appreciate the tour that you took, but there's more farming going on than probably you witnessed. A lot of it depends on commodity prices, and a lot of it depends on what people will plant. I know on our land, occasionally we'll put corn or rye or whatever, but you do have to rotate. So there are times when you may only see hay. So it's not, it would be tough to draw a conclusion by 1 year of viewing, because and we did, Mark, help me out with this. We did a survey a couple of years ago, and I know some of us participated in it with the Soil and Water Conservation Service along with Cooperative Extension about what crops we grew and when. So it isn't that agriculture doesn't exist. There are different types of it, and some of us have horses too that
Yeah.
go beyond just traditional, what you may expect in farming. I know that Bruce does a lot with timber, so there's a fair amount of woodlot agriculture also in town. I just want to make sure that we don't make a generalization about agriculture because there are not a lot of dairies around anymore. That's absolutely true. Thank you.
Right, and I certainly wasn't judging that you have
No, no.
more or less agriculture. It was really, from a land use, I come from a dairy farm, and so I really look at zoning as an opportunity for being farm friendly, and we want to make sure we include all types of agriculture in a diversity of agricultural activities as uses that we want to encourage in the zoning. So it doesn't matter to me, or from zoning perspective, of whether it's corn or soybeans or grains or hay or whatever. We want to have a kind of a big tent for agriculture. It was really just an observation that right now it seemed like there was a lot of hay land.
Well, a lot of us are in the ag district also, and we come under ag and markets, which sort of trumps zoning in a lot of areas.
Yeah. I will also say, Nan, that there are a number of sheep farms. There's a bison herd. Some of the sheep farms are very hard to spot because they're almost hidden. And there are people who are selling meat and plant starts, and there's a pig farm. There's a bunch of different kinds of farms going on out here, I'd say. There are also two Mark Whitmers on the call. Tim is pretending to be Mark Whitmer, I see.
Oh.
And I'll tell you a little bit about Boyceville. So Boyceville started because Bruno Schickel, the developer, owned some of that land, and he had he does a lot of building, and he had a crew that he didn't have any work for them in the winter. So they basically started by building units of 3 of those houses at a time over a series of winters, over 7 winters, and got up to 21 that are on one side of the road. And then he decided to really expand.
Did we lose Jean?
Hi, I'm back.
Okay.
I went away suddenly. He decided to expand, and I think there are about 120 units in there now.
I don't remember. We did an interview with him for the sake of the documents, because the county documents only showed one unit, because they record multiple unit developments as single houses. But anyway, we did an interview with it, and anyway, I'm sorry, when Jean comes back, I can I hope she can finish. But I know that he based it on some Swedish children's books, which is what gives them their look. There's by, I forget her name, Ingrid something, Andresson or something like that, who did all these famous watercolor drawings in children's books. And he produced a series of those. They're all rental units, as far as I know. And there is a small town hall, a small meeting place, and various kind of communal gathering things. There are bus stops, not enough buses. Maybe Frank can tell us about that someday. But we have enough bus stops around. And I'm sorry, Frank has also been in charge, very much involved with county transportation.
And Mark currently sits on the TCOG committee.
Right.
In the PCAT committee.
So yeah, so it's been there, and the thing is that there has been the possibility and likelihood of expanding. It's a double issue, because there's, on the one hand, there's the increase of population, people who go to the markets and who go to Brooktondale and all these things. And then there's the other aspect which might have to do with the relationship to the water supply, to soil and runoff, things like that, and power actually, and how that I believe that there were a series of situations that had to do with gas lines or something like that.
Okay. Okay, that's good background. Let's see, is Jean on yet? So do you
I'll
think
just
that I-
say, I'll just say I live not far from Jean, and we're having a thunderstorm right now, so that might be
Oh,
affecting.
okay. Okay. Well, I mean, so those were kind of my observations. Do you want me to move on to the next item on the agenda, even though Jean is not here? Yes, okay. So one of the files that she sent around to everybody is, if you have it in front of you, I had titled it the Town of Caroline Zoning Checklist. And so I wanted to explain what that was. And certainly didn't want to give the impression that everything on this checklist is something that you have to include in the zoning. But what I did is I read through your comprehensive plan and the task force report and the site plan law and the other materials that I had about the town. And mostly from the comprehensive plan, I simply made a list. So the left-hand column of that table is a list of all of the things in your comprehensive plan that you mentioned as topics that were important to the community to be addressed somehow, from affordable housing to environmental justice, traffic calming, so there's 2.5 pages of various topics that could, and I emphasize and underline could, have some way of being addressed in a land use ordinance or a land use law. And so it's up to you as the zoning commission as to what gets included, how they get included, how detailed you want to be or not detailed. But I wanted to start with recognizing the land use related topics in your comprehensive plan that we should discuss. And you can decide that you don't want to address them or how you want to address them. But that file is I call it a checklist because, the comprehensive plan has established direction for the town to at least discuss and address those. And so then the middle column of that file is really how does that topic get addressed, or how could that topic get addressed in the zoning law? And so I think you can, by looking down in some of you talked about the different sections that a zoning law has. Yes, Ernie?
I got the email and I got those attachments, but I have not been able to use them. I get a temporary error for a form.
Okay, I wonder if, let me see if I could share my screen here. I don't know if I have, let me see. No.
You should be able to.
I can't share the screen.
I just made you co-host, Nan. So you should be able to. Yeah, go for it.
Okay,
Has
gotcha.
anybody else been able to look? I just.
No.
No, I just got yeah.
Okay, so
I was asked
that
to
up
join
now?
Gmail. I was told that I needed a Gmail account in order to access the document.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, that's weird. It's just a plain old Word file.
No,
I will resend it as a PDF. Maybe that will help. It's just there's nothing special about it.
I
So-
actually have a Gmail account and I still couldn't open it. So,
Really?
yeah.
Yeah,
Oh, I'm
me
so
too.
sorry. I didn't realize that. So can you
I'm
see it
sorry.
now?
Yeah, I can open it, so I don't know. I had no trouble opening it. Odd. I am back on the phone. My internet has totally given out on here.
Okay. So everyone can see this file?
Yes.
Yes.
So down in this column on the left are the topics that I pulled because they were discussed in your comprehensive plan. So these you can look at that they were elements of your community that you somehow want to address, from affordable housing, denser housing and hamlets in your focus areas, a whole bunch of environmental related topics, environmental justice, historic character preservation, rural character preservation, connections, traffic calming, promoting small businesses, a bunch of farming, diversification of farming, value-added farming were all things that were talked about in the comprehensive plan, along with farmland preservation, promoting retail trade in hamlets, visual and scenic view sheds, light and noise pollution, open space protection, green building practices, renewable energy. I'm just going through these quick. And then home-based businesses, design standards for commercial businesses, kind of connected to that is formula businesses, economic impact review, cell tower siting, and community and climate resiliency. So you had a lot of topics that were discussed and identified in your comprehensive plan. So these topics here are things that the zoning could address in some way or another, more or less detail. You may ultimately decide not to address all of them, which is fine. That's the prerogative of the town. But I wanted to start with knowing what is the direction that the comprehensive plan gives the zoning commission, because that's kind of your marching orders. Your marching orders are to try and implement the comprehensive plan in through this land use regulation that we're going to be working on. So this second column here is like, what in zoning can actually be used to address that topic. So for instance, I'm just looking at promotion. How do we promote small businesses in a zoning law? Well, we have a use table that allows for a wide variety of businesses. We have a strong site plan review law, which you have already suggested. Whoops, a typo. Design guidelines. And then we can have a variety of supplemental regulations or special use permits. So you may decide that you want to put a size limit on certain commercial businesses, which is a tool that communities can use to prevent big boxes and some of the franchise businesses that come in that might be 30, 40, 50,000 square feet, that the zoning can address that by putting size limits on certain commercial buildings. You can see that affordable housing, some of these have, well, the purpose statements can address that having affordable housing is something that you as a community are interested in. You can allow for multi-family dwellings like you have behind your town hall. You can allow for developments like the Boyceville cottages, or you can not if that's what you decide to do. So what I wanted this table to do was to give you all an idea of the connection between your comprehensive plan, policies and direction, and the actual tool within a zoning law that can address them. So as we go along, at some point, we are going to be kind of looking at whether these topics get included in the zoning law in some way or another or not. And so when we're done with this document, we can go back and say, this zoning law addresses this topic, and this topic, or maybe you're going to have check marked in all of these in some way, so that we can make a strong tie between the zoning law and your comprehensive plan. So this was really to help you start seeing the zoning tools and the specific to-do list from the comprehensive plan. At the end, I added in some other things that were not in your comprehensive plan that we will talk about as we move forward. For instance, there is something that your site plan review has not addressed yet, and that's what's called a modified site plan review. Some communities use a modified site plan review for things that don't really need the whole site plan process, but might have something that you still want reviewed at some limited manner. We can address, in your comprehensive plan, you talked about escrow for addressing abandoned sites, and escrow is a really important tool in the zoning law that we can include. Integrating your local stormwater law into the zoning law is going to be an important tie. We'll have to decide whether you want to have a special use permit for anything. That's going to be a big topic of discussion when we get there. As I mentioned earlier, you're going to have to decide if you want to do anything about property maintenance, abandoned cars and junk. And then, as we talked about, large developments, like the Boy Scout project. So this is really something that you can review between now and the next meeting, and get familiar with what are the comprehensive plan topics, and what are some of the tools within the zoning that we can use to address those topics. I hope that this will be some sort of a guideline for us to follow and to kind of cross-check with as we move along to see what you're interested in addressing. And I will, as soon as we're done with our call tonight, I will resend this as a PDF so that you all have it and can open it up.
Thank you, Nan.
Yeah, so I'm, any questions, concerns, or any, observations that you want to say about this, fire away.
I don't know if we're all on, but thank you for so much for this. I wish I had been able to see it earlier. It's great, but it's really clear that the procedures section is going to be crucial. I mean, and the procedures section, it seems, is going to be one of those areas where essentially the ethics of what we wish to accomplish are laid out, right? I mean, as far as I can understand here, and that there are so many things that refer back to the procedures section in terms of what they are, which means that perhaps a lot of the zoning will come from an evaluation of whether a certain kind of use is compatible with the procedures, with the goals of the town, right? Is that what that section means?
Yeah, when you say procedures, do you mean like the
yes, there are certain things, or purposes.
Yes.
Yeah, the purposes.
Yeah, absolutely. The purpose, and that's why the other file that I sent you is a draft of the purpose statements.
Right.
It is the foundation of a zoning law. It is, in my opinion, and from a legal perspective, it is the most important thing. Because that needs to reflect your values in the community and what you want to accomplish. And when all else fails, when something goes to court, the first thing the court looks at is your purpose statements and what are you trying to accomplish. And they will use those purpose statements to determine whether a zoning rule is arbitrary and capricious. if it can be connected to some sort of community goal. So absolutely the purpose statements are the foundation, and that is where we have this very intimate tie between the purpose statements of the zoning law and your comprehensive plan. Because the zoning really is just a tool to implement your comprehensive plan. So all of these things, have
Right, right.
components in the purpose statement, for sure. That's an excellent observation.
Can I ask someone else to chair since I can't see people? So who would like to do that?
I'm sorry, Jean, I couldn't hear what you said.
I'm sorry, I said I can't see people, so I'm asking if someone else will chair the meeting and take questions. Maybe Tim?
Sure. And Tim is no longer Mark.
Okay, great, thank you.
So does anyone have questions at this stage?
Yeah, it's a lot to digest, I know. And I think that my advice is to, when I resend this, read it over, think about it. I think as you go through it and as we continue on, this with our meetings, these will come up again. We'll have lots of discussions about how, or if you want to address these topics through the zoning. I did want to mention, I think I put at the bottom here, down, where did I put it? Maybe it was in the email, I forget now. I don't want to convey that there are other things in your comprehensive plan that are not land use related items. So I only pulled out from the comprehensive plans the things that were land use related to make this kind of to-do list. So I didn't want to make anyone have the impression that we were discounting other non-land use things that are in your comprehensive plan.
Nan, can I ask a follow-up question? So I'm just for clarity for everyone. I'm assuming that in terms of potential language and verbiage, that the strategy would be still to depend on the work that was done on the comprehensive plan to build the language based on what's already there, so we're not starting from scratch. So this might seem much less daunting than it might first appear. Is that a correct observation?
Yeah, we're certainly going to build on, we have the comprehensive plan, we have the task force report, which went into great detail with information. In the minutes that were attached to that land use report were excellent background to inform folks on how that report was put together and what the thinking was. So yeah, and I think that if we, that's a kind of a good segue into, let me just share, let's see, where's my other file here? This one. So this one I gather then you didn't get either to open up.
I did see this one.
I did too. I saw it.
Yes.
And
Okay.
this is excellent. I just want to say, other than a few grammatical corrections and a little clarity, I really think this was wonderful.
So, yeah, so this goes back to what Val said about the purpose statement. So this is these first sections here, the enacting clause, the title and the scope. They're just standard local law, zoning kinds of things that show what the authority for the town to do a zoning law is. But the real meat of this is this purpose section. And so from your comprehensive plan, from the language that was in your moratorium and your moratorium extension, your site plan, the draft site plan, that is in the land use or the task force report had a lot of the language. You've already articulated a lot of those purpose statements. And so I pulled them together into one place. And, you know, so these should be familiar with, you know, these aren't things that I just pulled out of a hat somewhere. But these A through K statements, this is one where, and I know I asked Jean this when I first started, whether your committee kind of works by consensus or whether you vote, you know, by majority. This is the one area that the language of these purpose statements, everybody should agree on, because we will have arguments later on about, do we want to regulate this or do we want to regulate that? But our foundation is those purpose statements. And if there's any disagreement about these purpose statements, we want to handle all of that before we move on, because everything is going to flow from these purpose statements. Everything we do in the zoning law is going to be connected somehow to these purpose statements. So you guys really need to read these, edit them if they're not the right words. You know, if they don't sound like you, then we can edit them to sound like you. They really, they need to fit you like a glove. So it's not, this is a step that is not to be taken lightly. This is a really important foundational step for everything that we're going to do.
So how do we do that?
Well, you know, it depends on whether everybody is, we have about a half an hour. We could start with the first one and go through it. If not everybody has read it and prepared to speak about it, you know, I don't know. I would want everybody to feel like they were ready to talk about these. So, you know, really the only way is to start at A and say, what do you think?
I would think that that would be a good way to start.
Yeah, me too.
I think we should do that. It's not long and weighty, so let's do it.
Okay. So let's look at, let me make this a little bigger here. So hopefully you can all see that. So the first one is, and these can be reordered. I contemplated putting these in a different order, but some people think that the order of your purpose statements convey priority. You can decide whether you want to do that or not. So these are not necessarily in any kind of priority order, but the first one is promote and maintain the rural character, livability, and natural resources of the town.
I think that sums up in a very tiny nutshell the message of the comprehensive plan in a obviously very pared down way. I like that statement for myself. I mean, it leaves a lot of discussion room, but it's general enough, but broad enough to my way of thinking, unless I'm missing something, which I certainly might be.
Well, livability.
Seems like a good.
Yes, so this is one of my questions. Is that, I mean, actually, no, it really is crucial. And in terms of all the surveys and everything that led into the comprehensive plan, this was number one on everybody's list. It seemed. I might say maintain and promote versus promote and maintain, but the thing is that. Is there the capacity of this document to then refer to the comprehensive plan? Because there's a huge livability is a very complicated term, and the comprehensive plan actually spent quite a bit of time trying to define how the residents felt, right, what livability was. So as long as that's included, I think that that's fine. The cross-reference.
Yes, clearly, the first thing in here is that the zoning law is in accordance with and has been developed to ensure blah, 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 and to be consistent with the town's plan. So that's a given.
So maybe they should say something like livability as discussed in the comprehensive plan or as defined in the comprehensive plan.
Like that?
Yeah. I mean, I'm just a guy reading this, and vagueness drives me crazy. So that would mean a lot more to me. Yeah.
And one of the things that we might want to do is rural character is a term that's bantied about everywhere. But I bet you if you had 10 people lined up, everybody would have a different description of what rural character is. And so that's also going to be a really important definition that I recommend we include so that from reading the zoning law, everybody knows what we mean by rural character. So then when the next couple of meetings, when we get into the definition, we will add clarity to what some of those terms mean through the definition section.
Thank you.
All right, you want to move on to the next one?
Sure.
Okay, mitigate adverse impacts to neighboring parcels, public facilities, infrastructure, natural environment, and climate. So there is some overlap between here. This is kind of like a subset of this. So if you didn't want to be so specific, we could take this out. But one of the things that zoning, we hope to do is to establish procedures and development standards that allow for development to occur, appropriate development to occur in the town, and to mitigate adverse impacts. So, again, this may be out of order, but that was, I don't remember if that was in your site plan review law or where, but that was some of the wording that was used already.
Can I just say, I really like that. I really like, letter B. I think that's great.
What do we mean? What do we mean by infrastructure?
Well, that's a good point. Infrastructure can be anything from your town hall to roads to electrical and utility lines to your cell tower and broadband, water and sewer. I know you don't have that, but those are typically infrastructure.
So public infrastructure.
Yes.
So the word mitigate implies that there's going to be some adverse impacts. And I mean, that's what it says, mitigate adverse impacts. But mitigation, by definition, is like making something less bad than it otherwise would be. And so I wonder if this should include avoid or mitigate adverse impacts. If there is the possibility to avoid adverse impacts, wouldn't we want to try to support doing that?
Or
Excellent point.
Minimize commonly used.
Any other comments on that?
I like that.
Okay, and yes, someone had a point.
No, I was just asking if anybody else had a question.
Oh, okay.
I just, this is Bruce. I just got back to part of it anyway.
Sorry, Bruce.
So what did I miss up to this point? Don't know.
Bruce, we're on the Article 1 title, the scope and purposes, and we are down on number B.
B, okay.
B.
And you know, the other thing too is just to keep in mind that as we deliberate other sections of the zoning, you may revisit these purpose statements and add to them or edit them in some way. So, you know, they're certainly something that come up, and we often say, oh, we really should address something else that we missed. So anyway,
Right.
C is preserve and protect the significant scenic resources in the town.
Yep.
I think that's fine.
I think that works.
I will note there's nothing about history in any of this. Is that not part of the comprehensive plan?
It is.
Yeah, absolutely it is. So, yep, so we need to, let's come back to that. Let's add,
Good point.
Throw it in there somewhere, you know, just.
For now I do.
let's come back to that one. That's
Yeah.
excellent. Because
Yeah.
there's parts of it maybe in H, but not really. So excellent point. All right, D was oriented to promoting local businesses, opportunities for new, small, and I emphasize small because your comprehensive plan talked about small businesses, home-based businesses that are, and this was kind of my wording, and I hope I interpreted it right, because you had a lot of text about kind of the making sure the aesthetic character of development fits into the town. So we want to promote local businesses and opportunities for new small and home-based businesses that are of such scale, intensity, architectural form, and located to integrate with the rural, residential, and agricultural nature of the town.
How about arranged instead of located?
Arrange?
Or of such location
Yeah.
that are of scale, intensity, architectural form, and location.
Oh, could we say cited?
Yeah,
I
location
think-
sounds too much like
Right,
putting it somewhere else. When we're talking about putting it on a site, so cited is
right.
good.
Cited is good, yep.
Yeah, and that's really got a strong connection to your site plan review, which is all
Mhm.
about citing of things.
Right.
Yeah, and
And the
I'll
only
just
thing-
add in here that this line really does build on the work of the team that was proposed revisions for the site plan review and the design standards, and this reflects that extremely well.
Good.
Yes.
The only thing that I wonder about now that I'm looking at it with a fresh eye, some communities pretty much allow home-based businesses to do whatever they want to do. Other communities have home-based businesses split into two, where they have kind of minor home occupations. You know, you're sitting in your home office doing your work and who cares? But someone who's got a gazillion dump trucks and excavators and other things that are part of their home-based business is sometimes dealt with a site plan review or some other kind of standard. So you know, without knowing how you feel about this, I don't know how you're going to regulate home, or if you're going to regulate home-based businesses. So I wonder if home-based businesses, if the same thing holds for scale, intensity, architectural form, and cited.
So when we talked about revised design design standards rather, to replace the older existing design guidelines, we talked a lot about architectural form and elements of design. And so as long as that concept is captured here, you know, I think that the conclusions of that committee, that task force that worked on that, was not so much that it was, you know, type of business or size of business, but it was more, you know, the architectural form, the design standards, you know, and the design image that would be protected, or that would be portrayed, that should be in keeping with the, you know, the history and the rural character of Caroline.
Okay.
Would this, Nan, this is just a question, would this then preclude, if we had this statement, if it came up later on in the process, would it preclude our addressing, let's say, as you put it, the scale of home-based businesses?
Oh, no, it wouldn't preclude
As I
that at all.
understand it, kind of falls within our site plan review right now anyway.
Okay.
Great.
So this next one is again kind of a more detailed of A, promote and protect ecological values that promote air, water, and agricultural resources, as well as environmentally sensitive areas to help preserve open space habitats and that encourage outdoor recreation.
So maybe the second promote could be provide.
Or preserve.
Oh, this one.
Yeah.
Value that value.
I mean,
Want
it
singular?
really is more relevant.
Or would it be simpler to just say preserve air, water, and agricultural resources and not have this in there?
I think outdoor recreation is probably an important idea.
Yeah, and ecological values, while it's crucially important, is vague. And so I think maybe if it doesn't appear here and it still gets across the message, that would work.
Well, what we could do, what about this? If we took this out, add it in there.
So is there a reason land is not included with air, water, and agricultural resources? You know, what about, you know, forested resources? That doesn't fit with agricultural. So I'm just wondering about the choice of the descriptors here and what's left out versus included.
Right.
Maybe change the second preserve to protect, because otherwise you have preserve twice in the same sentence.
So in this context, agriculture is, to me, kind of referred to from, you know, the open space habitats ecological perspective that agriculture provides, not necessarily as an agricultural economy, which is maybe more of this next one, but maybe we didn't quite capture, because it's not just small scale agriculture. We want commercial agricultural activities. So this one seems more like ecological to me, and this one is more, you know, economically oriented from an agricultural perspective.
Nan, one of the characteristics of the town that might be worth noting that might not be self-apparent is that we serve the very significant watersheds, especially the 6 Mile Creek watershed, which is the city of Ithaca water supply. And when I read environmentally sensitive areas, I'd somehow like to make a gesture to our sensitivity to the watershed somehow.
Could you say including something like that? Or especially?
What does everybody think?
Well, I think by saying the watershed, that does include like the protected tribs too.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, as someone who doesn't live in the 6 Mile Creek watershed, I'd hate to see it get first billing. Just saying.
Well, as someone who does, I'm happy to have it. By the way, the last line where it says, and that encourage outdoor recreation, I think that needs.
Gotta get rid of that. Yeah. I don't think we need to call out the 6 Mile Creek watershed in particular, right? I mean,
all water is important.
Yeah, I think Bruce is right. Watershed is.
Or just say watersheds.
Just say watersheds. Watersheds plural.
Watersheds.
Yeah.
Right. That's what I
Do
had.
you want to add watersheds here?
Yes.
Yes.
I think I also, there's a corner of this town that actually the water goes to the Chesapeake.
Right.
Everything else goes north, but it is an important, we do have very important watersheds here. So.
Not to be too picky, do we want water and watersheds right next to each other? Just sounds kind of screwy.
Well, I think that there's so much that has to do with groundwater, long-term groundwater, water penetration, and watershed. It's such a huge issue. I think it's nice to include, just as we included site before, that it's good to have something that has to do with watershed, because we have that watershed review committee.
Right.
It gives them much more strength, I think.
Or we could say something like surface and subsurface watersheds, and just kind of make more out of water, since it's surface and there you go.
The aquifer is also really critical. Yeah.
Yeah, that's good.
Should ecological functions just be ecological function?
No, there are many ecological functions. There's not just one.
Well, I know, but I mean, in the way that this is being, I don't know. I just, kind of.
Well, chew on the grammar of all of this. We can always make tweaks as as we go along.
It's just that once we get past this, revisiting this on it with a fine-tooth comb is harder. If we had editable documents of some sort, or some way to just circle little.
Yeah, well, I believe I sent this as a Word document to everybody.
Oh, is it? Oh, okay. So we could mark it up and send it back. Okay.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, it's there.
Okay.
Yeah, let's concentrate. I mean, we only have, I don't know how, we have 4 minutes left. So I don't know how much further you want to get.
Let's try to do one more.
Okay.
Yeah.
So this next one is oriented to agriculture, but again, it's been a couple days since I looked at these. I kind of look at I'm wondering if maybe we should get rid of small scale in this one. The small scale and hobby farming are kind of the same.
Yeah, I would get rid of small
Agreed.
scale and just keep agricultural activities because we have large scale farms too.
Right, right.
Yeah.
I'm also not keen about the term hobby farming.
Okay.
I think many people who do small scale farming don't consider it a hobby.
I
Correct.
totally agree. You're right.
Agreed.
So small scale farming and agricultural activities. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Or just farming and agricultural activities?
Just farming.
Farming is farming. Let's just get rid of small scale. I have 6 kale plants. I believe I am farming.
I know. That's why I just wonder whether eliminating some notion of scale means that we get into an economic situation where it has to be a farming that is profit based or something like that. You know, versus that's why I think it was hobby farming. In other words, where a profit is and a tax this is sort of the specific agricultural tax situation is not engaged.
Are you talking about the agricultural assessments?
Yeah, well,
Yeah,
all the various kind of things. I think that I'm just trying to think of back why hobby farming was originally encouraged, because it had to do with the idea of not making a taxable income from farming activities, I think. But I wasn't the expert on farming.
So what would you call someone that's doing permaculture for shiitake mushrooms and selling their mushrooms at farmers market?
If that's their only business, that's agriculture. Otherwise, I don't know.
No, if they're doing like 12 other things and they, many people rely on multiple different activities to make their livelihood.
Right. That's why I think small scale actually sort of worked, because it differentiated from the larger scale. Primary, where's the primary profit for an individual?
Except does scale refer to the economic revenue derived, or the amount of land used, or what? I mean, you could have a fairly small plot of land that's growing a very high value crop.
Mm-hmm.
Is that
Like
small scale?
Well, let's think about it in terms of a zoning law. So the zoning law is going to say farming is allowed, and you're probably not going to have many regulations related to farming because we have the ag and markets law that kind of governs our ag district. So, and I've never seen a zoning law that ever addresses home gardens, people that are growing, whatever in their backyard. Zoning never really addresses.
Chicken laws.
And we want to have the zoning give those people the ability to do the shiitake mushrooms if they choose, without having people say, oh, well, we don't think you should be doing that kind of farming. That's what the ag district law is all about. So, farming as it's defined by the New York State ag and markets law is commercial. It is a commercial operation. You don't have to make a profit at it. You might lose money at it, but you do it as a commercial venture. So otherwise it's just, you're just growing food for your personal use.
Yeah, right. Otherwise it's gardening. And that's why we sort of wanted to stay away from getting into those kind of legal issues. I mean, there was also this discussion that technically, I guess, Caroline literally is one of those so-called right to farm towns, which means that virtually everyone has that right, in the town. So But that's why I don't know enough about this to say what it should say. All I remember was that there was a considerable discussion in terms of what the adjectives would be before farming.
So
I guess my advice in the purpose statements is to be broad. Farming is a broad term. Agricultural activities are a broad term, and we can further finesse those with our definitions and with things to come. I think for the town to make a statement that you want farming and agricultural activities is a good purpose.
What
Yeah.
what if isn't all farming agricultural activity? Maybe we just eliminate farming.
Well, except I thought about that. Except what about agricultural activities that do food processing? You know, if someone wants to put in a commercial kitchen to turn your berries into jam. That's an agricultural activity. It's not necessarily farming.
What about cheese making? Is that agricultural activity or what?
It could be both. You know, if someone is a dairy farm and they're making cheese from their milk or their goat milk, it's a farm. If they are just importing milk from somewhere and making cheese in some building, that's an agricultural activity.
Right. So my neighbor no longer has cows, but he buys milk for his cheese making. So, but I have a question. Can I ask what contemporary homesteading means?
That was in one of your other documents. I don't know. I thought maybe that was a term you all.
I wasn't on that committee, so maybe Val wasn't on something you. But or.
Yes, I think it had to do with the notion of self-sufficiency. You know, being off the grid and things, but it goes sort of beyond that. In others, being independent economically and things, as a capacity, as something that somebody should be allowed to do.
We could do away with contemporary.
I know.
Yeah, I think it's kind of a weird statement, actually.
There it is. Yeah.
Well, homesteading. Yeah, I know. Homesteading all has all sorts of
That's a problem.
colonial issues too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Couldn't homesteading be part of your rural lifestyle?
Yeah, I would think it would be included in that, actually.
Me too.
Yep. We don't want homesteading alone. That's really problematic.
Yeah. It's especially, yeah.
Yeah.
It's gone from being wonderful to being imperialistic, right?
Yeah.
To provide the mule.
Language.
Well, I agree with the farming and the agriculture.
Yeah.
You get 40 acres of mule.
Yeah.
And I don't know why topography gets such a big hit here. Shouldn't it be what the economy and environment? I mean, you know, there's a lot more going on than just the slope of the land.
Good call.
That was my next.
Well, let me play devil's advocate here.
Yeah.
You just want to end it after agricultural activities, that you want to promote the town as a vibrant and desirable community to enjoy the rural lifestyle, farming and agricultural activities, period.
I agree with that. Because who's to say what the economy and environment can reasonably support?
But isn't that?
I think so, for the same reason that we eliminated mitigate.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if we need to be able to point to something and say, look, this is a threat to environmental quality because it's, you know, establishing a business, an agricultural activity with runoff that on some low scale level would not be a problem, but on a larger scale could be an environmental threat. I mean, we need that background there to be able to fall back on.
You want to say consistent with the environment?
Yes.
I mean, I agree. The economy, I mean, you know, in 2 years, who knows what the economy is going to be.
Right, right.
The environment.
Does
But
that
I
work?
do think the environment's important. I think so.
I think that really represents our comprehensive plan much better, to include the environment.
Right. I mean, the notion of topography was included because there are so many areas that, as you've noticed yourself, where one of this, and it's been pointed out so often that one of the things that's distinctive is our topography. If you go into Dryden, it has a totally different sense to the hills and things like that. So the
Right.
notion is that you don't want to change the topography that much, but then there are also certain kind of things that are totally not conducive to the topography that we have here. So I guess I think this is clear. I think this is clear.
Um,
And what do we mean by environment? I mean, you know, we're using that term as the natural environment, the economic environment. I mean, what's
It sounds like we will need a definition.
yeah, I think the environment is very broad. I mean, the environment,
okay? So here we want it to mean everything. You know,
yeah, I mean, you know, it's kind of like character. Character kind of is people
Yeah.
associate the word character with aesthetics, but it really encompasses the whole built and unbuilt environment of an area, or the whole built and unbuilt landscape of an area.
How about if we said something like to be inclusive, the cultural, I just totally lost my thread, historical and natural.
there you go. Yeah, I like that. I mean,
That kind of covers a variety of different. What do you think?
I think that's great. Those are the
I just-
contexts that we should always be addressing, I think.
Well, actually, I have a question, I guess. I mean, I think it sounds kind of not inclusive when you say consistent with the cultural cultural environment. What, it has to be consistent with the current cultural environment? What if somebody has a different cultural environment that they want to introduce? That maybe they're, you know, anyway, yeah. I guess I'm a little bothered by the cultural historical. And when we're talking about environment, I thought we were talking about the physical environment, meaning topography and all that, not atmosphere.
How about rural instead of cultural?
I agree with.
Well, we
with
already
you now.
say rural lifestyle. We already
agree
say
with Michelle
rural
now.
lifestyle.
Yes,
What?
I agree with Michelle now.
Say rural lifestyle.
Yeah, me too.
Well, I don't know, because I don't even know with a rural lifestyle, because we have people who live in villages, who might be offended by that. But
Oh, we sound so like Ithaca,
I know it.
not get too weird,
pleasing
guys.
everyone.
Isn't the context here that
I don't think that's a bad thing.
F reflects what's already in D and E? So that if D and E are really emphasizing the natural environment that's
Mhm.
taken for granted, would that be true, Nan?
So you're saying that F is really already addressed in here?
No, I'm saying that what agricultural activities would be consistent with is already addressed in D and E.
Oh,
F can just be about promoting, and E is.
I mean,
about
I guess this seems like a complex sentence to say that you want to promote farming.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess that the question is, are, you know, kind of vibrant and desirable community to enjoy the rural lifestyle is kind of like maintain and promote rural character. I'm just wondering if we really, because the next one down here, we have preserve and maintain prime and important agricultural soils in the town. I'm just wondering if maybe what this one is really promote farming and preserve and maintain prime and important agricultural soils, and just combine them. I don't know. I mean, this is where, you know, it's got to fit you.
Well, I like the language of F that talks about the town as being a vibrant and desirable community.
Yeah, it's just it gets squirrely when it starts going into the other details that overlap, like on that other part which talks about agricultural soils.
Oh,
How
what
about
about
just promote the town as a vibrant and desirable community in which to live?
Or you could just end it at lifestyle.
And then we could make another one that's about farming.
I think that's a good idea.
Yes, good idea.
I like it.
Good. I think I'm going to suggest, since it's 9:15, that everyone on the committee think about one that would be about farming, and also look at G, H, I, J, and K, and make some notes on that. And if you have some notes, send them to me, and I can compile them and send them on to Nan.
But could you first send us this revised document
Yes.
so that
Yep.
we're all working from the same thing?
Absolutely. Yep. I will send this exact thing to you.
And the
I'm
checklist.
gonna-
And the other checklist as well.
And I'm going to put today's date on here so that we know that it was from today. So, yep, I'll send you this one and the checklist. And then I would say for our next meeting, we will continue our discussions from G through L. And I'll have to think of the next step to come. Might be looking at our maps and starting to think about where things, you know, what are logical places for zoning districts. There's a lot.
I think that's a
depends on
great
that.
idea. I think looking at maps could be extremely useful. And I'm not sure, is there some way that we can, I will talk with Mark about whether there is some way that we can get some maps and put them somewhere so that we can go and look at them. Even if we all have to.
Yeah,
Good
I
idea.
mean, some of the maps are in your comprehensive plan.
Right.
And then Rick is going to be developing as we kind of progress with our ideas of, you know, where are the hamlets, you know, maybe where are the ridge lines that you may want to protect for, you know, or other kinds of overlay districts. I think he was going to be working on that, but to look at your basic layers, I mean, don't you have all of the maps from your comprehensive plan as separate files that could be put up on the webpage?
I have no idea,
Yes,
but
we
I will
should.
find out.
We should.
I believe
Yeah, we probably should.
Yes.
I think
Right.
there
We
are
have a
probably better
comprehensive plan.
maps.
A lot of the maps, though, that were in the comprehensive plan were you know, made by people in the committee because we didn't have any very accurate maps, and so they're not as high resolution as one would like.
Right.
Well, Rick has downloaded all of the data. I know that. He's got all of the data that we need to make high resolution maps if you want those to be updated.
That would be great.
It would be really good. I have a question. Can
Go,
you hear me?
Bruce.
Yeah, I was just wondering, since probably before I got on here, because I started on B. Nan, are you the one that developed this?
Yeah,
Okay,
from your
comprehensive plan.
the moratorium language, and your site plan existing language.
Okay. All right. I was just wondering, because when I saw it, I thought it was a little, when it said town Caroline draft zoning law, I was kind of wondering who developed it, and I'm glad it was you. So we'll go from there. We'll keep going. Thank you.
Good. Trying to see if there's anything else. I think we are planning to meet on the 22nd. I will talk to Nan and see if we can think out some of the next few meetings and send out some email to people about that and get your opinion. And I am very glad that we actually did some actual work tonight. That's really terrific. I feel like we're moving along. So did anyone else have anything to say? I have to say it's extremely difficult to do a meeting by telephone. I hope to God the next time I actually have internet, but I think the storm knocked something out. So yeah. So thanks everyone. Unless I hear anything else, I will call for an adjournment.
Yeah, I could, one more thing.
Sure.
After we hammer this out and come up with what we think is a solid draft zoning law, are we going to consider a first public meeting? And are we going to consider public meetings for this committee in any time in the near future?
I would very much like to have a meeting where we can be together. I think the last thing that Mark told me was that that's still not allowed by the governor. But as soon as that's possible, I hope we can do that. I mean, I think if we were in a large enough space, maybe we could figure that out.
I just might mention that the town board is working on this, but I mean, we're trying to develop a situation where we can use the town hall reasonably, and that's going to mean with adequate distance, et cetera, because we have to understand that not everyone who's coming into the town hall is going to have been vaccinated. We can't count on that, so we have to be cautious.
Right.
And
Okay.
excuse me, I wondered about, there was some discussion a while back about a new sound system. Is that still real?
About what? I'm sorry.
New sound system.
We have a new AV system in the town hall so that we'll be able to do combined live and virtual meetings at the same time.
Excellent. Great. Thank you.
And that's in place and ready to go.
And I just want to reassure everybody that in my proposal, we included several public input opportunities as we go along. So we're not just going to throw a whole zoning law out to the community from A to Z. That, you know, at milestones, we're going to be checking in, like when we're done with the purposes in the zoning districts in general. You know, I think that was our first kind of check with the community to show everybody where we're heading and make sure everybody is on board with these purposes and the general direction. So we have to talk about when those milestones will be, but we certainly wanted to, you know, be transparent and include the community in all of our steps as we move forward.
And all zoning commission meetings, just to be clear, are open to the public.
Yeah. The last thing I wanted to comment on was that there was, in the last Brookendale newsletter that just came out, the Old Mill, there was something again about the zoning commission and, you know, when they met, all that, and the reference. So happy to hear that that was there. So I think we will call for adjournment. All approved?
Aye.
Aye.
Great.
All right, very
Thank
good.
you.
I'll send files out then.
Thank you very much.
Thank you
Nan.
very much, ma'am.
Very much,
Thank you.
Ann. Great job. And
Thanks.
everybody, have a
Bye-bye.
good night. Stay dry.
Bye-bye.
Good night.